In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the Sailor King of Pen Professional Gear Demonstrator Fountain Pen. I'll go over the specs, I'll do a writing sample, and I'll tell you what I like and don't like about this pen coming up. Blake here with Blake's Broadcast. On this channel, I review fountain pens, paper, and ink, and as always, I put links in the show notes in the description below. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps out my channel. Alright, let's get on with the review. This is the Sailor Professional Gear King of Pen Demonstrator. This is the largest in the professional gear range. Now there is a King of Pen version of the 1911, which is the more torpedo-shaped one. It doesn't have these flat tops, so it's a little bit longer than this, but it's the same width, and you get that same big nib. This pen has white metal trim, very robust feeling, stepped sailor nib, just like you get on the regular professional gear. This is just bigger. Everything on this pen is bigger. You have a very nice cap ring with these sort of coin edge details here, which are carried down into this metal piece where the converter attaches to. Very nice detail the way that they carried that down into the pen. On the cap ring it says Sailor, Japan, founded 1911. And then at the end here we have a metal cap ring. You can see these threading through here and some maybe silicone grease or some kind of adhesive. That part is a threading that the user is not supposed to be interacting with, but it's something that you can see because it's a demonstrator. There are also these lines in the body. Let's see, they're kind of hard to see. You can kind of just see them there. They start about here and they end here. It's inside the pen barrel. I'm not sure what the function of them is. You can't feel them from the outside. Going up, you can see the nib and the section here, and then you can see the less clear part where the nib sits. So there's like an extra sleeve inside the pen cap where the nib sits, I think just to help seal off the pen. I do wish that was more perfectly clear. And then going up we have the clip, and we can see more threading, and on the finial we have the Sailor logo, which is not showing up very nicely. And on this pen it is more black. It's not shiny metal like on the professional gear, the standard size that I reviewed earlier. I'll put a link to that pen up above. So let's unscrew the cap. Now here we have the big Sailor King of Pen nib. This is a very big, oversized nib, and as a comparison, this pen here is a buffalo horn pen made by Stilo Art Karuisawa. This is the standard full-sized Sailor nib, so you can just kind of see how much bigger this nib really is. And you can see the detail on the nib is a little bit different. It's a little bit more intricate down here on the smaller nib, whereas you have more of these wider waves on the big King of Pen nib. Up at the top, you have a little bit more room, and above the breather hole at the slit, there's a loop there where it becomes plain on this one. Those are really the main differences in terms of decoration between this giant nib and the more standard size Sailor nib. This is a broad nib, which you can see is indicated on the side. The feed is the same as those smaller nibs, just bigger. And then this is a cartridge converter pen, as you could see from before. Takes a proprietary Sailor cartridge or converter. And the interesting thing about this pen is that they really extended this metal section down much more than a normal cartridge converter pen would. So like as a comparison, this is a Cross Townsend, and this has a much bigger grip section, but if you line up the grip sections, you can see that the metal on this extends way further down than on a normal pen. And then you kind of have these little windows here to see the ink level. Now, if they just eliminated this piece, because this doesn't hold the converter in place or anything, then you could see, you know, the clear ink in the converter. So it's an interesting choice that they did that, but I think it's nice. I think having all of this extra metal here, this kind of coin edge detail here and here, really makes the demonstrator part of this pen nice. Normally I would be less interested in a cartridge converter demonstrator. Typically, and actually this is the only cartridge converter demonstrator that I own. You know, typically with a demonstrator like this TWSBI Eco, they're piston fillers or vacuum fillers where the ink literally is just sitting in the body, and then you have the piston built in there so that there's, you know, enough mechanism to really show off everything that's going on in the pen. But here, I just thought this is one of the coolest looking King of Pen models there is, because they put all that extra metal in there. I really think this actually works great as a cartridge converter demonstrator. One of the few cartridge converter demonstrators that I can think of that, you know, I think pulls it off very nicely. Because this is a flat top pen, it's not super long. It's not a small pen, obviously, but you know, this is 141, 142 millimeters capped. Uncapped, we're looking at about 126 millimeters, and posted, looking at about 163, 164 millimeters. So when posted, it does become quite long. It does post relatively nicely. It doesn't go too far though down onto the body, so you can see where it kind of stops right there. Let's do the grip section. At the narrowest part, we're looking at 12.2 millimeters, so that's quite wide, and then 13 millimeters at the widest part of the grip section. And then on the body, the widest part of the body, we're getting to 15.1. So it's a pretty fat pen. As a comparison to the Montblanc 149 here, this has a very straight section, but it does taper a tiny bit. We're looking at 12.7, 12.8, and at the widest, 13.2, and on the barrel, I don't know where the widest part of the barrel is here, 15.2. It's very similar in size to the 149. I mean, this would definitely be one of the King of Pen's direct competitors. Okay, so now let's do the weight. So 34.64 grams. That is quite heavy for a plastic pen, but you do have, you know, all of this extra metal stuff in here, so you do get a pretty sizable weight, 21.82. I personally like writing with this pen uncapped. It's big enough for my hand. For some people who have larger hands, you might want to use it posted, but I tend to find that I prefer it unposted. Okay, so let's do the writing sample. This is a Sailor Pro Gear King of Pen Broad. And this, you know, I don't really know what this ink is. It's a Sailor Gentle ink. It's blue. It's close to Konpeki, but I don't remember what it's called, and I can't read Japanese. So Sailor Blue, Gentle Blue, something. So fast writing. Yeah. This is, in my experience, a very reliable nib. It's a pretty wet nib. It's a broad, but I would say it's more like a Western medium. I mean, it's a Japanese broad, so you expect it to be a bit thinner, and it is. And there's a bit of toothiness to this nib. You can get some flex out of this nib. Sometimes this nib railroads on me, sometimes works perfectly. So it seems like sometimes I have a good filling, like the pen is filled well and it's flowing, and then other times it becomes kind of on the drier side. And this seems to be okay. You do get some nice line variation here. Because of the size of the nib, it is on the soft side. If you really like to push on like a nib, and I mean you need to be careful with this because these really are not flex nibs. This Montblanc 149, it keeps up a lot better. This is an oblique double broad. I haven't run into flow issues with this pen where I occasionally do on the Sailor. But when, yeah, see, look, I'm getting railroading there. Yep. The nib isn't really designed for flex. Because it's big, you do get some softness to it. But if that's your goal with this pen, I don't recommend this King of Pen nib. You'll be better off with the Montblanc. This pen does do reverse writing, and you do get a noticeably thinner line when you do that, and it keeps up very nicely. And I think it's actually quite smooth, especially considering how thin that line really is. So very good for reverse writing, not great for any kind of flexibility or pushing on it. There's, a touch of that signature Sailor feedback. I personally really love this pen. This is a nice writer and a very nice, comfortable size. So what are my pros and cons for the Sailor King of Pen Professional Gear Demonstrator Fountain Pen? Well, the biggest pro is definitely that awesome oversized Sailor nib. This is such a nice wet writer, and it has just a touch of that Sailor signature feedback. It's really a nice writing nib, and it feels like a Sailor nib. It's really excellent. I also like the big comfortable body. It's just a nice size. You have a good grip section, and being the flat top professional gear form factor, you get a big pen, but it's not too long. For me, this is really just right. This is the sweet spot in the Sailor lineup for me. Now, I also think Sailor did a really good job making an interesting demonstrator out of a cartridge converter pen. Typically, I would be less excited about a demonstrator with the cartridge converter system because you're not filling up the body with ink, so you're not changing the color. But here they added these extra metal pieces. You have this coin edge, which is kind of continued down on the inside of the pen. They really made a great looking demonstrator out of a cartridge converter pen. So really like this pen. Now, the biggest con is definitely the price. Retail in the United States is $990 for this. And at that price, I think it's too much. I think in the $500, $600, $700 range, an argument could be made for this pen. And at $500, I think this is an awesome pen. But $990, I'm not sure where all the value there is going, because you do have a plastic body, you do get that really nice, beautiful Sailor nib, but I just don't quite see $990 here. So that would definitely be my biggest drawback for this pen. The other potential drawback is the section here, because it's see-through. I've seen other people's King of Pen demonstrator where ink kind of gets trapped in here, and it can look a bit ugly. And really the only way I think you get it in here is by dipping the nib into ink and drawing it up that way. I would recommend filling this up preferably with a syringe, or just dipping the converter directly into the ink so that you don't get ink stuck in this see-through section part here. There's also noticeable seams on the grip section. You don't really feel it when you're writing with it, but they're there. A couple of minor cons, but the biggest con is that retail price. If you can get it in, the $500, $600 range, I think this is a pretty awesome pen. So that was the Sailor King of Pen Professional Gear Demonstrator Fountain Pen. Do you guys have this pen? Do you like this pen? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more fountain pen, paper, and ink videos, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much, and until next time.